Under our kind of trivia section today, I actually literally earlier today, because we were chatting in particular, and we haven't it's part of, it leads into our hot takes, final thoughts, but the title of this episode and why it's called Lost Girls. And so I was trying to figure out on the internet if there was a definitive answer. And instead I came across something totally different that was talking about the episode. There was this article from March 2017. It literally was published 2 days before the final episode of the show aired. And it's a Hollywood Reporter article called "This is the Vampire Diaries episode that changed the course of the series." And so Julie Plec and both Ian and Paul are being interviewed throughout this, and they're specifically talking about episode 6. So I thought that was really cool. So a few interesting things that we learned reading this article is that when the show premiered in 2009, it was the most watched debut of any show on the CW network at this point. Wow. Now, the CW was a newer network, but still, that's huge. And until the CW started to have a lot of popularity with things like Supergirl and Arrow.
Arrowverse.
Yes. This was the most watched series on the network.
Oh.
Yeah, right? Very cool, very cool. I also thought this was interesting. The pilot got mixed reviews from critics, which I think is interesting because I think it's a pretty solid pilot. I think it sets things up really well. But it was this episode, the 6th episode, Lost Girls, which, as we already talked about, was written by the co-creators, Kevin Williamson and Julie Plec. This has been connected with the franchise signal, like, as the show's major turning point, that this is where things started to click, where critics started to, like, be like, oh, there's something here, but also where the team of writers and the actors started to realize that things were happening. So just a couple things that I want to talk about in this article is that Julie Plec says, like, really in those last couple minutes of episode 5, You're Undead to Me, right, where Elena's starting to put together that vampires exist. And through to this episode, she talks about further episodes as well, but we'll only talk through episode 6, that this is what she would call series defining in terms of when they, quote unquote, hit their tone, hit their characters, hit their emotions, hit their plot. So that's really cool. I think it makes sense. Like, we've been talking ourselves the last couple episodes of, like, ooh, stuff is starting to pick up.
Yeah.
Like, the plot has been set in motion. We're getting familiar with the characters. We're kind of moving away from some of the setup, and we're diving deeper into kind of the meat of this, pun intended, of this world. And then it was interesting that our two leading men, these two actors both said that this episode really is like a touchstone for the 8-season drama. Paul Wesley said, I think that's when we were like, this shit is pretty good. And Ian Somerhalder said, this is his favorite episode ever. And I think this is really interesting because this is after they had filmed season 8. So they had done the whole show, and this was his favorite. Probably because of his scene with Vicky, right? Like, that's such a fun thing. But then Paul Wesley goes, yeah, it's my favorite episode too. He said, Ian and I watched this episode together, and that's when we were both like, this is really good. That was a great moment. Ian goes on to say, it's a really phenomenally crafted episode of television. It might be a teen vampire soap opera, but damn it, it's a great piece of television. And I remember looking at Paul and just thinking it clicked. And then just the last thing I want to say about this is that Julie Plec talks about how proud of this episode she and Kevin Williamson were, as well as Marcos Siega, who directed it, but that this was the finished product, in their opinion, was so good, but getting there was so hard. She said that about 60% of this episode was written between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. the morning before. It absolutely had to be delivered to production in order for them to be able to shoot it properly. So that's really wild, too. And she gives a lot of credit to Kayla Ewell and to Ian for, like, how they work together in what they call the Coke Den Depeche Mode scene. But just talking about how like everything really worked, from how Marcos Siega did the flashback scenes, which we've talked about, we thought were really seamless, the acting across the board. And so I just thought that was really fun that like this episode is the episode that put the Vampire Diaries, at least critically, on the map.
Yeah, I love that. And thank you for sharing that with all of us, because it was, I mean, I love that we kind of, like when we were talking about this earlier off air and you finding this article, I think it crystallizes where we're at too, right? Like, because now and I feel like each episode we're like, oh my gosh, more and more and more. But it really does like it takes a tonal shift. Like even, and it's been a while since I've done a series watch. So so there are like the finer details I don't remember as clearly, but like the show, there was a reason why I really loved the show. And the reason why is because they do make some pretty big choices. And I think killing a character that's like one of our main people. I mean, albeit she's a vampire now, we'll see how that goes, but that's pretty big. Like that's like Game of Thrones level, like stakes type stuff that you just don't always see, because it feels like typically people have plot armor. And I mean, and I don't know. I mean, I guess, and we'll revisit this more when we have like, we go a couple episodes down the line, but I think that that is shocking, because you just like aren't expecting it, that like that's a big thing to happen like 6 episodes in, right? And just being like, oh, like it's not just like these vampires and these people, like now this character is now on the other side of it, and that's cool.
Yeah.
So. Hello Sister is written, directed, and hosted by Christina Rosso Schneider and Brenna Dinan. Graphic designs are by Alex Schneider. Music is written and produced by Dwight Evan Young. Sound design and video are recorded and produced by Dwight Evan Young and Brenna Dinan. Hello Sister Podcast is a Bad Day Media production.